Right now in Boston, there are 101 active gangs with more than 2,600 suspected gang members. Those numbers come directly from the Boston Police Department and its gang database. It's a database that Mayor Kim Janey told me is a problem. It started as a fight in East Boston High School. Sarah Sherman Stokes said it ended in a young man with no criminal record and no gang affiliation being deported.
My client was not a gang member, nor did he ever say he was a gang member.
Sherman Stokes is an immigration attorney and represented one of the students involved in that 2015 altercation. She says a Boston school police officer wrongly labeled her client an MS-13 gang member.
It feels like this case brought an incredible amount of attention to all of the problems inherent in a gang database.
We got our hands on a gang assessment database form heavily redacted by police. The Boston Police Department uses a point system for identifying gang members and associates. For example, if you're in a group photo or have contact with a gang member, that's 2 points. If you use gang paraphernalia or other identifiers, that'll earn you 4 points. 6 points and you're considered a gang associate. 10 points and you are a verified gang member.
Relying on those kinds of things, relying on social media posts, relying on the fact that you hang out with your cousin and a few friends in a park, these are not reliable indicia of gang membership, and they tend to be drawn along class and race lines.
There's some real issues with how this operates.
Boston City Councilor Ricardo Arroyo is a former public defender. He says the gang database unfairly targets people of color. African Americans make up 25% of Boston's demographics. But according to 2019 data released by Boston Police, 66% of the gang database is black non-Hispanic people. And Arroyo said he's also concerned the database may include people who shouldn't be on there at all.
I've actually had clients who have been in the past who showed up as gang affiliated that were not.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Carabin.
In March, David Carabin, the director of the Boston Regional Intelligence Center, told the Boston City Council there's been at least one case they know of.
Has the department ever found that someone was wrongfully included on the database?
I am aware of one instance, but when we did realize that that person was not in the database accurately, we removed them.
Arroyo said that's one of the biggest issues surrounding the gang database. If you're mistakenly included in it, you would never know because the database isn't public.
It's counterintuitive. If I were on the gang database, I wouldn't belong on there, but I'm not going to randomly send a letter to BPD to say, hey, am I possibly on the gang database and could you take me off?
I think the gang database is certainly a problem.
We caught up with acting Mayor Kim Janey following a mayoral forum on criminal justice reform inside the Suffolk County House of Correction.
The data suggests that, again, too many people end up on this list. They don't know how they end up on this list. They're not aware that they're on this list.
Investigators, however, say the database is a proven and effective tool for fighting crime. According to Boston Police, more than 40% of suspects arrested for gun charges in 2020 were in the gang database. So were 49% of shooting suspects arrested in 2020. And in the last 5 years, an average of 31% of shooting victims were in the gang database.
So it's important to make sure that we've got accurate information on individuals that are engaging in violence and disorder in our communities.
Dan Linsky is a former superintendent-in-chief at the Boston Police Department and at one time oversaw the BRIC and its gang database. Linsky said it wouldn't be a bad idea to start letting suspected gang members know when they're added to the list.
Quite frankly, it might be beneficial if we told every gang member, just to let you know, we know what you're up to, and you're going to be held accountable. There's no anonymity should you find out. So maybe there's an automatic process where we notify gang members they've been entered the system.
After repeated requests for comment on the gang database over the last month, Boston police responded Monday night saying, quote, the majority of the firearms violence in Boston is driven by gang dynamics, with a small number of people causing a disproportionate amount of the violent incidents. The gang database is used to prevent and investigate these acts of violence and reduce the risk of trauma in Boston neighborhoods. Over 98% of the individuals in the GDB have a criminal history in or outside of Boston. Statement goes on to say the database, quote, specifically includes those engaged in gang-related criminal activities, regardless of race and ethnicity, which plays no role in the database or in the BRIC's analysis of gang crime-related behavior. BPD saying the database is not shared with ICE for immigration purposes. It's only shared in the investigation of crime, and each database entry is reviewed at least once every 5 years. And if the individual is no longer active, they tell us they are purged from the database. You can see the detailed stats from the department and more responses to our question right now at our website, boston25news.com.